You ever have one of those days where the weight of life feels like it's pressing down on you, and then the universe decides, hey, let's add some drama for fun? That was me, on a random Tuesday evening, feet up, trying to zone out in front of the TV after yet another argument with Megan. We'd been in this Cold War phase for months, married for 6 years, and somewhere along the line, we'd stopped talking and started tolerating. But hey, we're trying to fix it. Counseling, date nights, everything Pinterest swore would rekindle the spark. Then, the phone rang. Unlisted number. I ignored it. Probably another scammer offering me a non-existent cruise. It rang again, and again. By the fourth call, I grabbed it, already rehearsing my annoyed, take me off your list. But the voice on the other end? Calm, gravelly, unsettling. You don't know me, but I know your wife. What? I spat back, already regretting picking up. Megan, the voice said with an infuriating calm. She's not who you think she is. Okay, buddy. Who the hell are you? I barked. Does it matter? He sounded amused. But tell me this, what was Megan doing last Tuesday night? I froze. Last Tuesday, Megan had said she was meeting an old college friend for dinner. I believed her. Or maybe I hadn't. We've been so out of sync lately that I didn't even bother checking. Thought so, the voice said, as if he'd heard my silence. Watch her closer. You'll see. The line clicked. Just like that. No elaboration. No context. I stared at my phone, feeling ridiculous for letting some random creep get under my skin. Megan came in a few minutes later, her face tired but unreadable, like it had been for months. I almost told her about the call, but stopped myself. What was I supposed to say? Hey babe, some random dude says you're a liar. Want to talk about it? So I let it go. But then the calls didn't stop. Every evening for a week, like clockwork. The same number, the same voice. And each time, the guy got bolder. First, he dropped little details. Megan's favorite coffee shop. The gym she used to say she was too lazy to go to, but apparently frequented. Then specifics. The hotel in Midtown she'd been spotted at. The exact time she was there. I wanted to believe it was all a coincidence, some sick prank. But the guy wasn't guessing. He knew things I didn't even know. That's when I cracked. I confronted Megan. Who the hell have you been meeting? I blurted out one evening, waving my phone like it was a smoking gun. Because apparently, I'm the only one in this marriage who doesn't know. She froze. For a split second, her face flickered with something. Fear? Guilt? But then, she rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Are you serious right now? She snapped. Do you even hear yourself? Someone's clearly messing with you, Jake. You think I'm... what? Sneaking around? Grow up. She stormed out of the room before I could respond, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to so badly. But that flicker of fear, that had stayed with me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every detail over and over, trying to convince myself I was crazy, paranoid, letting some prank caller ruin my life. But then I thought about those details. Too precise, too perfect. And so, I started digging. Her texts, her emails, her calendar. I combed through everything. At first, it all looked innocent. Maybe Megan was right. Maybe I was losing my mind. But then I found something. A message buried in her email drafts. Unsent. Addressed to someone named E. Just 3 words. We need space. I stared at that draft, my heart pounding. Who the hell was he? And what kind of space did she need? I couldn't shake the draft. We need space. What kind of space? From me? From someone else? And who the hell was he? The next morning, Megan acted like nothing had happened. She was up early, humming softly while pouring coffee, like the argument the night before had vanished into thin air. It pissed me off. I wanted to ask her, to demand answers, but I didn't. Instead, I watched her carefully, studying her like a stranger. When she left for her usual errands, I waited exactly 5 minutes before grabbing her laptop. My hands were shaking, and I felt like a complete asshole, but I had to know. Her inbox? Empty of anything remotely suspicious. Calendar? Just yoga classes and hair appointments. It all looked normal, too normal. Then I remembered her phone. She never left it lying around anymore. But Megan wasn't as careful as she thought. Last night, she left her watch charging in the den. The moment I tapped on the watch, it synced to her phone. I scrolled through her recent messages, most of them harmless chats with friends and family. Then I found one. It was a string of texts from a number with no name attached, but the conversation made it clear. This was E. I miss you. Can't we just meet for an hour? Megan, I told you not right now. Things are tense at home. E. You always say that. Megan, you know why. Be patient. I stared at the screen, ball rising in my throat. It wasn't just some harmless friend. There was intimacy in those words. Familiarity. This wasn't innocent. It wasn't long before I found their meeting spot, a hotel downtown. My blood ran cold. Was this what the caller was talking about? I didn't even need to go there to know. My gut screamed the truth. Megan was cheating on me. I spent the rest of the day vacillating between rage and despair. 11 years down the drain. The life we'd built together a lie. I punched a hole in the wall, swore at the air, then sat on the couch in stunned silence. But eventually, the anger cleared enough for a plan to form. I wouldn't confront her yet. Not until I had the whole picture. I wasn't going to give her a chance to wriggle out of this. I reached out to the caller. Yeah, that same creep who dragged me into this hell. He answered on the first ring. Well, took you long enough, Jake. I gritted my teeth. You know something? Spill it. Who the hell is he? There was a pause, and I could almost hear the satisfaction in his silence. He said finally, is me. And trust me, you're going to want to sit down for the rest. My heart dropped into my stomach. The caller was her lover. What the fuck do you want? I snarled. If this is some kind of sick power play, relax, he interrupted. You're asking the wrong questions. Megan's little affair with me? That's just the appetizer. The real fun is in the main course. Check your business accounts, Jake. The line went dead. My business accounts? That didn't even make sense. Megan had no involvement in my company, no reason to touch any of the finances. But as soon as I logged in, the blood drained from my face. One of our secondary accounts had been almost completely emptied over the past year. Tens of thousands of dollars funneled out in small, unnoticeable transactions. And they all led to the same place, a business I didn't recognize. A little more digging revealed the truth. The company belonged to E. Megan wasn't just cheating. She was funding her lover's failing business with my money. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands trembling with rage. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a goddamn heist. My wife wasn't who I thought she was. But the worst part? I couldn't decide what hurt more, the lies or realizing I'd been blind to them all along. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Megan's face, her smile, her laugh, all the moments I thought were real. And now I knew they weren't. They couldn't be. The next morning, Megan acted like everything was normal, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. She kissed my cheek before heading out, and I had to clench my fist to stop myself from snapping. How could she stand there, pretending to love me, while funneling my money to her lover? I waited until her car was out of sight, then grabbed my phone and called my lawyer. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. By noon, I had confirmation. Megan had been making those transfers under a separate account she'd set up in my company's name. It was clever, almost untraceable, almost. By mid-afternoon, I'd pieced together enough. The company she was funneling money to was barely operational. The tax record showed it had been hemorrhaging cash for years. And guess who was listed as its primary shareholder? Ethan. That was his name. Ethan Jameson. A washed-up entrepreneur with a string of failed ventures to his name. But here's the kicker. Ethan wasn't just her lover. He was a ghost from her past. I spent hours piecing together every scrap of information I could find about Ethan. Old social media posts, business filings, even grainy photos from years ago. What I found made my stomach churn. Megan, or rather Emma, as Ethan's post called her, had been with him long before we met. They'd started dating in college, and for a while, it seemed like they'd been inseparable. But then something happened. Ethan's business ventures began collapsing, one after another, and Megan, or Emma, disappeared. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. She'd walked away from Ethan when his life went under, reinventing herself as Megan, the driven, kind woman I thought I'd married. But now, it seemed she'd gone back to him. Or maybe she'd never really left. I couldn't wrap my head around it. This wasn't just an affair. Megan had been living a double life, a perfect wife at home, and Emma, the devoted partner, funneling money to keep Ethan afloat. The rage burned in my chest, but under it was something worse. Doubt. How had I missed this? Was I blind? Stupid? Or just unwilling to see the truth staring me in the face? I needed proof. Undeniable, inescapable proof. Not for her. I already knew who Megan really was. No, this was for me. For my sanity. So, I followed her. That evening, when Megan said she was meeting a friend for drinks, I didn't let her out of my sight. I tailed her car, keeping my distance as she drove downtown. My heart pounded harder with every turn until she finally pulled into the parking lot of, you guessed it, a hotel. The same one Ethan's name had been tied to. She didn't even hesitate, just grabbed her bag and headed inside like she belonged there. I didn't go in. I couldn't. Instead, I parked across the street, my hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to burst through those doors to confront her and Ethan right there. But I didn't. I needed more than a messy confrontation. I needed to outsmart her. Hours later, Megan came home, smelling faintly of hotel soap. I forced myself to stay calm, acting like nothing had changed, even as every nerve in my body screamed at me to lash out. She climbed into bed beside me, her breathing steady, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, plotting my next move. If Megan, or Emma, thought she'd fooled me, she was wrong. I wasn't going to let her destroy me, my business, or my life. The next morning, I called Ethan. The bastard didn't even flinch when I said my name. Jake, he said, his voice smooth as silk. I was wondering when we'd get to talk. You don't sound too concerned, I snarled. Why would I be? Megan made her choice. She's with me. That smug confidence? It pushed me over the edge. You've been bleeding me dry, asshole. I'm coming for you. He chuckled. Actually chuckled. Careful, Jake. You don't know the whole story. Maybe Megan isn't the only one who's been keeping secrets. And with that, the line went dead. I stared at the phone, my rage giving way to something colder. Fear. What the hell did that mean? Ethan's words echoed in my head long after the call ended. Maybe Megan isn't the only one who's been keeping secrets. What the hell did he mean? Was there more to this than just an affair and the stolen money? Every time I thought I'd reached the bottom, the hole got deeper. I couldn't just sit there stewing in my own paranoia. So I started digging. First, I called my lawyer again. I explained everything, the stolen funds, the affair, the hotel meetings. He was stone-cold professional, but even he couldn't hide his shock when I mentioned Ethan. Ethan Jameson, he repeated. The guy with all those bankruptcy filings? Yeah, I said, pacing the room. Why? What do you know about him? My lawyer hesitated, then sighed. Jameson's got a reputation. He's been involved in more than a few shady deals. Fraud allegations, pyramid schemes. You name it. If Megan's tied up with him, this could get messy. Messy. Understatement of the year. I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. If Ethan was a con artist, what the hell did that make Megan? An accomplice? A victim? Or something worse? I needed answers. And if Megan wouldn't give them to me, I'd find them myself. That evening, while Megan was out again, I searched the house for anything she might have hidden. It didn't take long to find a second phone, buried at the back of her closet. The lock screen showed a picture of her and Ethan, his arm around her waist, her smile wide and unguarded. It was a punch to the gut. The phone was locked, of course, but Megan wasn't exactly subtle. Her favorite passcode was always our anniversary, so I tried it. Bingo! I scrolled through the texts, emails, photos, everything. And what I found made my blood run cold. The texts weren't just about love or sex. They were about money, plans, schemes. Ethan had been feeding her lines about starting over, building a future together. And Megan? She'd been all in. There were references to offshore accounts, withdrawals I hadn't even noticed, and cryptic messages about cutting ties and disappearing before it's too late. Disappearing? Was Megan planning to leave me? To run off with Ethan and the money she'd stolen? The final nail in the coffin was an email chain between Megan and Ethan discussing my business. Ethan had been feeding her advice, how to siphon funds without getting caught, how to cover her tracks. And Megan? She'd been thanking him. "I couldn't do this without you," she'd written. "Soon, we'll have everything we need." I wanted to destroy that phone, smash it into a million pieces, but I forced myself to stop. I needed this. It was evidence, proof that Megan wasn't just cheating, she was actively conspiring against me. Against my business, against everything I'd built. When Megan got home that night, I pretended to be asleep. I couldn't even look at her without feeling a surge of rage and disgust. She climbed into bed like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't planning to destroy my life from the inside out. But I wasn't going to let her. The next morning, I met with my lawyer in person. I handed over everything, the phone, the texts, the emails. He skimmed through it all, his expression darkening with every passing minute. "This isn't just infidelity," he said finally. "This is fraud. Conspiracy. If we play this right, we can nail both of them." I nodded, my jaw clenched. "Good, let's do it." But as I walked out of his office, something Ethan had said nagged at the back of my mind. Maybe Megan isn't the only one who's been keeping secrets. What the hell was he implying? That there was something I didn't know about myself? My business? Or was it just another one of his mind games, designed to throw me off balance? I didn't know, but I was damn sure going to find out. That night, as Megan sat across from me at dinner, laughing at some stories she was telling, I couldn't help but wonder how long she'd been laughing at me. How many times she'd smiled in my face, knowing what she was doing behind my back. But if she thought she was in control, she was wrong. I had the upper hand now. The real question was, when the time came, would I confront her head on? Or would I burn her entire world to the ground without her seeing it coming? Either way, Megan, or Emma, was about to learn just how dangerous it was to underestimate me. I spent the next week preparing for the moment I would finally confront Megan, or Emma, or whoever the hell she really was. Every smile she flashed, every casual touch, every "I love you" she uttered felt like an insult. But I kept my cool. The lawyer and I had a plan. Gather everything, set the trap, and spring it when Megan least expected it. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal while the walls closed in around her. I followed her routine with precision, documenting every move. Ethan was still in the picture, though their messages suggested even he was getting frustrated with her. "Ethan, you said this would be done by now. Why are you dragging your feet?" "Megan, Jake's suspicious. I have to tread carefully." That message made my blood boil, but it also made me smile. She thought she was playing me. In reality, I was 3 steps ahead. I decided the confrontation would happen during dinner, our first date night in months. Megan had suggested it herself, probably trying to keep up the charade. She even dressed up, wearing the same black dress she'd worn on one of our anniversaries. The nostalgia made me sick. We went to her favorite Italian restaurant, a cozy spot downtown with dim lighting and overpriced wine. She was in high spirits, chatting about work, our upcoming plans, things that were never going to happen. I let her talk, nodding along, playing the part of the doting husband. Halfway through the meal, I excused myself and went to the restroom. But instead of heading there, I slipped outside to make a quick call. "It's time," I told my lawyer. He didn't hesitate. "Are you sure?" "Positive." I hung up and went back inside, my pulse pounding in my ears. The check arrived, and I suggested we take a walk. Megan agreed, looping her arm through mine as we strolled down the street. It was a beautiful night, the kind that would have felt romantic if I hadn't known what was coming. We stopped at a quiet bench in the park, and I turned to face her. "Do you love me, Megan?" I asked. She blinked, startled by the sudden seriousness in my tone. "Of course I do. What kind of question is that?" "No, really," I pressed. "Do you love me? Or is this just part of your act?" Her face paled. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and showed her the texts, the ones between her and Ethan, the ones where she talked about siphoning money and planning her escape. Her jaw dropped. Jake, I can explain. Explain? I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the quiet park. Explain how you've been screwing me over for years? Or how you've been screwing Ethan in hotel rooms while stealing from my business? She started crying, the tears streaming down her face in messy streaks. It's not what you think. Ethan needed help, and spare me the bullshit, I snapped. This isn't about Ethan needing help. This is about you. You've been lying to me, to my face, every single day. You've been funding his failure with my hard-earned money, and you think I'm just going to stand by and let it happen? She sobbed harder, but I wasn't done. Here's what's going to happen, Megan, or Emma, or whoever the hell you are. You're going to pack your things and leave. I've already filed for divorce. And Ethan? He's going down too. My lawyer's been working with the authorities. By this time tomorrow, his accounts will be frozen, and he'll be under investigation for fraud. Megan's tears stopped as quickly as they'd started. Her expression hardened, and for the first time, I saw her for what she really was: cold, calculating, and utterly unrepentant. You think you're so smart, she hissed. But you don't know everything, Jake. You don't know what Ethan told me. That caught me off guard. What are you talking about? Her lips curled into a bitter smile. You're not as innocent as you think. Ethan found something in your business records, something you've been hiding. My stomach sank. What the hell was she talking about? But before I could press her, she stood and walked away, leaving me sitting there stunned. Back at home, I pored over my business records, searching for whatever Megan and Ethan thought they had on me. Hours passed, but I found nothing. Was she bluffing? Or had I overlooked something critical? Either way, one thing was clear. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. Megan, no. Emma was gone when I got home. True to her nature, she disappeared without leaving so much as a note. Not that I needed one. Her things were missing, her closet empty. She'd left me with a wrecked home and a head full of unanswered questions. But there was no time to dwell. The trap had been sprung. Ethan's accounts were frozen. My lawyer had already contacted the authorities, and Megan's schemes were unraveling faster than she could run. Yet, her parting words stuck with me like a splinter. You're not as innocent as you think. What the hell did that mean? The next morning, my lawyer called with an update. Ethan's on the radar, he said. The investigators found discrepancies in his business records. They're preparing charges. Good, I said, but my voice lacked the satisfaction I thought it would. Ethan going down was inevitable. Megan's betrayal? That would take longer to process. There's something else, my lawyer added hesitantly. It's about your accounts. I tensed. What about them? We ran a full audit just to be thorough. There's another account, a corporate subsidiary. It's under your name, but the transactions don't make sense. Wire transfers to offshore accounts, payments to shell companies. It doesn't look good. What are you saying? I asked, my throat dry. I'm saying it looks like someone's been using your name to launder money. The ground seemed to shift beneath me. That's impossible. I believe you, he interrupted. But the paper trail points back to you. This isn't just about Megan or Ethan anymore. Someone's been framing you. I spent the rest of the day locked in my office, combing through every file, every account, trying to piece together how this had happened. Megan had access to some of the accounts, sure. But laundering money? That was way beyond anything I thought she, or Ethan, could pull off. Unless they weren't working alone. By evening, I had a sinking suspicion that Ethan and Megan's affair wasn't the whole story. There were too many moving parts, too many players. And then I remembered something Megan had once said, offhandedly, during an argument. You're always so busy with work. It's like you care more about the business than me. At the time, it had felt like a petty jab. But now, it made me wonder. Had she been watching? Learning? Waiting for the perfect moment to strike? It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was realizing how much of myself I'd sacrificed to build a life with her. And now, it felt like she'd used every part of me against me. The next few days were a blur. My lawyer worked overtime, filing motions to separate me from the fraudulent accounts. Ethan's legal troubles deepened, and Megan's involvement in his schemes became clear. She hadn't just been funneling my money, she'd been helping him cover his tracks. The authorities were closing in on both of them. But there was still one loose end, the question of who else was involved. That's when I got the email. It was from a burner address, the kind you couldn't trace if you tried. The subject line read, "Checkmate." Inside was a single sentence. The truth isn't always what you think it is. Attached was a file, dozens of pages of documents, emails, transaction logs. And at the bottom, a name I hadn't seen in years. It was my old business partner, Patrick. Patrick and I had started the business together years ago. He'd been the brains behind the operation while I was the workhorse, the guy who made things happen. But as the business grew, we drifted apart. Eventually, I bought him out, and he moved on to other ventures, or so I thought. The documents told a different story. Patrick had never really left. He'd stayed in the shadows, using Megan, and later Ethan, to siphon money out of the company. He'd orchestrated the whole thing, knowing Megan's greed and Ethan's desperation would make them easy pawns. But why? The answer was in one of the emails. Patrick blamed me for cutting him out, for taking what he thought was rightfully his. And he'd used Megan to get it back. The next steps were clear. My lawyer handed everything over to the authorities. Patrick was added to the investigation, and with Megan and Ethan already under the microscope, it wasn't long before his name came up in connection with them. But knowing the truth didn't feel like a victory. Not really. It felt like the end of something I believed in, my marriage, my business, my sense of who I was. All of it had been built on a foundation that wasn't as solid as I thought. The last time I saw Megan was in a courtroom. She didn't look at me, and I didn't try to make her. Her plea deal was already in place, her betrayal laid bare for the world to see. Ethan didn't fare much better. And Patrick? He was still denying everything, though the evidence was stacked against him. As for me, I walked out of that courtroom a free man, but not the same man I was before. The life I thought I'd built with Megan was gone. But maybe that was a good thing. Maybe it was time to rebuild, this time on my own terms. Because if there was one thing I'd learned through all of this, it was this: sometimes you have to let everything fall apart before you can figure out what really matters.